Welcome to your Reflective Edge Reset. I'm your hostess, Justine Gonzalez. Let's get into it. You hear my voice, and it's super early morning where I am located, but I just couldn't wait to make this video for you all today. And we are diving into the world of psycho-cybernetics. And if you're like me, I was asking myself when I came across this book by Dr. Maxwell Maltz, what in the world is psycho-cybernetics? And if you've never heard of it, it is actually derived from a Greek word, and it's loosely translated to a helmsman who steers his ship to port. And this is what Tony Robbins, many of us know Tony as a great motivational speaker. He, I believe, even had a Netflix special called I Am Not Your Guru. But I do love a lot of Tony's work and what he is about. And he says this about psycho-cybernetics and also Maxwell Maltz's work, which is a lot of the research I'm pulling from today for this reflective edge reset. Before the mind can work efficiently, we must develop our perception of the outcomes we expect to reach. Maxwell Maltz calls this psycho-cybernetics. When the mind has a defined target, it can focus and direct and refocus and redirect until it reaches its intended goal. And when I read this quote from Tony Robbins about Maxwell Maltz's work around psycho-cybernetics, it really reminds me of terms that we hear for the continuous improvement process as well as Kaizen. So I want to let that sink in, just some kind of language stuff, but let's hop into Dr. Maltz's 5 rules for freeing your creative machinery. Now, one thing I'll tell you about this text and a lot of the research of Maxwell Maltz, I love how it is so applicable to understanding that we are creative beings made in the image of the Creator, and we are able to understand the systems that are working within us and open up the channel, so to speak, to let ideas flow. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I jokingly tell my partner, I feel creatively constipated. And when I feel this way, it has often been a result of not being in space just within myself, spending time for introspection. If you haven't read one of the more recent articles from the Reflective Edge newsletter, I will link that to this video because I dive into even understanding something called our interoceptive systems. That's right, our internal systems. And so back to freeing your creative machinery today, though. I'm going to give you 5 quick highlights in the next 5 minutes before we close out this quick pause together, and just encourage you in this moment that if you don't have even 5 minutes mapped out for yourself daily, maybe it's a midday alarm, maybe it's when you first wake up in the morning, maybe it's in the evening, maybe you do this 3 times a day. I'm not sure. I know there's been seasons in my life, I can tell you truthfully, it seemed unfathomable to even spend 5 minutes alone with my own thoughts. So I want to leave that there because it's real. And also, I don't want you to be embarrassed. I had a great teacher through the years who's also a pastor, and he used to give this talk about, it was a joke, about how we sit down to pray, and especially if we're outside even, sometimes the human mind can be so distractible that we sit down to pray and we say, "Dear God, oh look, a butterfly." And it's such a great visual because it's the same way I imagine so many of us feel when we open our phone. And it's something we probably have to do, whether it's for work or to stay in touch with family, but it can seem like this open road with this can of worms that we're just opening up and saying, okay, brain, can you resist scrolling? Can you resist clicking on this game or this app or this smorgasbord of things intended to take you apart from connecting with your innermost creativity? So here are the 5 rules for freeing your creative machinery. If you have been a little bit creatively constipated like I have been before, where it just feels like I can't gather a focus around my ideas. And Dr. Maltz says that number 1 is to do your worrying before you place your bet, not after the wheels start turning. And so one of the things that he talks about is just this idea that it's not the time to start worrying once you've taken the leap. When you take the leap, you have to surrender the outcome. And I think this one is really hard for so many of us because, again, we like to be in control because then we can manage the potential of those outcomes and it isn't this wide open, I'm opening the phone, what's going to happen? And it can feel like that when you're taking on anything new or creative. Maybe you're trying to go down a new career path. Maybe you're jumping into a new relationship. These things all have to do with how will we respond once we begin down the path. It's one thing that we make that decision, but then when you get more into it, it's hard not to let the wheels of anxiety start kind of grinding their gears, so to speak, once we've taken that leap. So again, this first rule for freeing your creative machinery: do your worrying before you place your bet, not after the wheel starts turning. The second form of the habit of consciously responding to the present moment. Oof, this one is tough for me, but in the second of the 5 different ways to really unlock your creative machinery from the theories and concepts of Psycho-Cybernetics, which is essentially being able to fixate on your goals, being able to tap into the power of your subconscious mind to actually improve your self-image, to learn to use your positive past, to develop compassion and self-respect and forgiveness in your life, to cultivate the power of rational thinking, and much, much more. Those are the goals essentially of Psycho-Cybernetics. We're understanding how do we guide the machinery that is the systems of our body, a beautiful creation we are. So that second thing from Dr. Maltz is this: form the habit of consciously responding to the present moment. And I find, again, taking no anxious thought for tomorrow. So I can't control what's going to happen tomorrow. You can't control what's going to happen tomorrow. So when we keep expanding upon what the could be's could be, it can really do a doozy and stop us up creatively. That I know from lots of personal experience. And then one of the questions, if we were to go a little deeper on this particular one of responding to the present moment: stop, look, and listen. That's a great rule of thumb directly from this text that is a way for us to pause and get present no matter the situation that we're in. Where am I? What's going on? Am I consciously practicing looking, observing, listening, taking in everything around me? I notice this a lot when I travel with others. Is what are they watching? What are they looking at in the airport? I know when I go into rooms, I'm big on scanning the room, seeing who's in the room, where the exits are in a room, things like that. But not everyone is thinking that way. So start to observe and just start noticing. So the next step, we have 3, 4, and 5 now for the 5 rules for freeing your creative machinery. And the third step and again, these don't have to be in order. They're not like steps like that in a linear way. They are 5 different ways that you can actually release your creative machinery. The third way is to try to only do one thing at a time. Oh, Lordy, say it again for me. Try to do only one thing at a time. So a really big cause of our confusion often, or maybe struggling to tap into our creativity the way we need to, or maybe our problem solving skills for jobs that we take, etc., is the resulting feelings of nervousness, hurry, and anxiety. And it's this absurd habit that we have as humans of trying to do too many things at one time. I am so guilty of this. Since I'm a little kid, I always want to be doing multiple things, and I have definitely found ways to harness this. Let me know in the comments, and as you hear and see this, what is this like for you, especially living in the day and age of technology, rapid communications, all types of apps. It is hard to try to only do one thing at a time, but our brains are designed in such a way that we are more effective if we do have that laser-like focus. So On any one of these two, again, I'm willing to go deeper. Or if you're like, hey, I need a strategy for the, don't do your worrying before you place your bet, so to speak, right? So just comment if you have ideas, or you're like, say more about that. What are strategies for being more present, etc. Okay, the fourth way that you can also release more of your creative machinery, so to speak, is to sleep on it. Often I find myself, again, this ties into some of these other ideas that are portrayed by Dr. Maltz in Psycho-Cybernetics. But when we sleep on things, we can come with a fresh perspective. We can give a chance for our subconscious, conscious, superconscious, for those three minds to actually relax and restore and meet themselves in this dream state, so to speak, of the subconscious. And I believe in that, but also that your creative mechanism will work best when there's really not too much interference from your conscious or the I, and also your ego that can get in the way. That is why good sleep is so important, because it's that space where even if you don't recall when you awaken, the brain has had a chance to process and synergize and synthesize and restore and make magic and meaning in the subconscious and superconscious. So then that I, or the conscious brain, can kind of get out of the way, because we do a lot of things when we are awake during the days to protect ourselves. That's the ego's job. It wants to protect the identity. The word identity broken down is id and entity, and it very much means etymologically a entity that is ruled by ego. So identity, whether that is maybe a gender or ethnic or racial, for example, those systems in our world right now, those are forms of identity. Well, if we break apart that word meaning and remind ourselves, identities can be helpful. They can give us meaning and purpose and belonging, but they only go so far to have us make meaning between the connection of our heart, mind, soul, and body. And that is why we must also allow this space for reflection that is intentional and purposeful. So sleeping on it is a really, really big key to activating your creative machinery and understanding how your creative juices flow most freely. And the final suggested point for unlocking more of your creative machinery today, number 5, is to relax while you work. When we're in this relaxed state, we give ourselves permission to not force and to allow creative flow to happen. So to really quickly recap for you this beautiful research from Dr. Maxwell Maltz, and we opened by kind of giving you I gave you an overview of what some of that work is and the origins of psycho-cybernetics and what it means. But these have been 5 rules in this reflective edge reset for you to consider for freeing your creative machinery. Do your worrying before you place your bet, not after the wheel starts turning. The second would be form the habit of consciously responding to the present moment. And one way to do that is to stop, look, and listen wherever you're at. The third, try to do only one thing at a time. Fourth, sleep on it. And fifth, relax while you work. So there you have it. Those are 5 different ways to really activate, reactivate, or free your creative machinery from Psycho-Cybernetics, which is the work of Dr. Maxwell Maltz. Thank you for being here for this Reflective Edge Reset. If you find value, feel free to share, and be sure to tap into the resources linked wherever you're finding this and listening and watching. Take care. And I'll see you next week for our next Reflective Edge Reset.